the Indian.
You.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Faye. You're watching Live with Faye. I want to first acknowledge all of you who have spread the word about this channel. And we are now well above 200,000 subscribers and over 1 million both on Twitter and on Instagram. So thank you for your support. Every view counts. It is our attempt to give you unbiased information in news without any opinion, and then bring you the opinion only of qualified experts to help us understand every subject better. That is how we choose our experts. Our experts are only professionally or academically qualified to comment on a subject. We don't bring anybody else in. So today we're going to talk about who should investigate the Pegasus leak. Should there be an investigation? I don't think that is a question anymore. I think it's fairly clear that there ought to be an investigation, because every other country in the world who's been impacted by this is conducting investigations. France is conducting an investigation. The UK has asked for an investigation. They're talking to the government of Israel demanding investigation because they have found that really key and sensitive phone numbers, including their heads of state, were part of that list, and they want to know who was doing it and why they were doing it, and they're demanding answers from the government of Israel and the company NSO. India has not demanded such answers. There is, of course, the ruckus that takes place in Parliament every day, where the opposition is demanding that the government have a structured debate, but the government has not conceded to that demand so far. Also, the responses we've received from the government have been slightly vague. We don't know the answer to the very simple question: did the Indian government use Pegasus? Yes or no? We don't know. Did any of the Indian government agencies or any state government agencies actually license Pegasus? We don't know. Was it? And the government has just assured us that there's been no illegal surveillance. But even within the legal surveillance, are we using Pegasus? We don't know. So none of those questions have really been answered. And do we as citizens deserve answers to those questions? I believe yes. But the big question is, how are we going to get those answers? Is it going to be a joint parliamentary committee? Is it going to be the Supreme Court? We know that there's a case before the Supreme Court because 2 journalists have gone to Supreme Court asking the court to take cognizance of this problem. Is it going to be the CBI? Will the government use national security as an answer and put everything in a sealed envelope? We don't know. So there are various vague, non-overlapping, sometimes overlapping laws that this could come under. We're asking that question. Who is going to investigate Pegasus? Where are we going to get our answers from? And what laws allow for this investigation? Now, to help us answer these questions, we have Mr. Kailash Vasdev and Mr. Sanjay Hegde, both senior advocates for the Supreme Court, who've been kind enough to join us. And Mr. Pavan Duggal, who is a lawyer who specializes specifically in digital crime, cyber law, and the IT Act. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm very glad to have the 3 of you join us this evening. Let me first bring in Mr. Sanjay Hegde. Mr. Hegde, there is the IT Act, the Telegraph Act. There are various other acts that we could talk about. But my question with Pegasus is, isn't it fundamentally violating our fundamental rights of privacy? Can Article 21 be enough at this point for the Supreme Court to take cognizance of Pegasus?
See, the Supreme Court doesn't take cognizance. That's for a magistrate's court to do. Okay. What the Supreme Court does is to decide on the fundamental issue whether an investigation is warranted or whether the government's inaction in not ordering an investigation, is that justified? Those would be the broad parameters of judicial review of administrative action. Once there already now is a commission of inquiry appointed by a state government, the Supreme Court may well deal with it itself may well say, look, let's hear what the government has to say. Does the government want to order an investigation? And just while I was listening to your intro, it suddenly struck me that Delhi has a new police commissioner.
Yes, he does. And
He's
he has
supposed to
a lot of experience with the CBI.
Yes, and he's supposed to be very efficient. It may well be that somebody files a FIR in some particular police station in Delhi, and the police commissioner himself orders an inquiry. That would be an adequate ahead of any hearing that it may have. But that's mere speculation on my part. If I was appearing for this government, which is a very extremely unlikely position, I would tell them that, look, some kind of inquiry is definitely warranted.
Yes.
And you can't put your head in the sand and say that, okay, nothing ever happened. That ship has long sailed, and that ship is sailing in several countries in the world. You have the French president who threw away his phone and has ordered an investigation. You have other countries also who are investigating. At the end of the day, a lot of threads join only in Israel. And how do you get relevant evidence out of there is a matter for a country to take a national position on. But there is no use obfuscating, there's no use denying. What the petition in the Supreme Court might do is to get past that denial.
So I think that it's fair to maybe conclude that at this point, also based on what Mr. Hegde is saying, that the possibility of an investigation can no longer be put off. That investigation must happen. Mr. Vasdev, a lot of people have been asking me this question as well, which is where the thought of having this conversation came from. Every day you have the opposition creating what is now called a ruckus in Parliament. The government continues to conduct business in passing bills. The ruckus will continue until the session ends, and then everybody will just move on. If this continues in this manner, is there a possibility that we might not get any answers at all?
Good evening. Yes, that is possible, because encouraging a din stops people from talking sanely. And we are doing precisely that. We are walking into a system where in the 2012, 13, 14 period, before the present group came into power, the same situation happened when the Congress governments were stalled from doing any work. It became parliamentary practice to receive your pensions and salaries without working for it. We have very sad precedents in this behalf. But you see, coming to Pegasus per se, Sanjay is right. If the Supreme Court decides to order an inquiry, it can authorize anyone to do so. I was listening to Mr. Tharoor, who's the head of the parliamentary committee on this, and he made a very interesting observation. He says, worldwide, if investigations have gone on, there is no reason why they should not happen over here. The problem in understanding the situation is worldwide, they take the position that infringement of national rights is a matter of national concern. In our system, we take the nation to be last because we want to use sedition, we want to use everything for the purposes of propagating a particular firmament of our thoughts. At this point of time, an investigation is mandatory. It is in the national interest because the very word spyware is associated with Pegasus. It is not a simple intercepting software. It is a software which is used for purposes of spying into everything. It can enter into space. It can enter into any situation. It can examine data. It can analyze data. It can forward data. It can do everything. We per se at this point of time have an odd situation where our military might is always under strain. We have 3 borders to defend. And it is in this context that a necessary inquiry is vital in the national interests. Pegasus is no longer a myth as the Greeks called it. It is something which is here to stay. If there is something which is here to stay, it is something which is affecting us. It is in the fairness of things that we give up the myth and come down to reality.
That's really well said. And I just want to, yes. I just want to bring in Mr. Pavan Duggal. Mr. Duggal, we have also outdated laws in these matters. The Telegraph Act is as old as this country is. Technically, older than this country.
1895.
So technically, the tapping of phones comes under vaguely the Telegraph Act, which was written in the 1800s. The IT Act, which is supposed to be our modern act, was written in 2000, so 21 years old. Before the internet looked anywhere like what it does right now. Can both of these acts be used to investigate the allegations under Pegasus? Is that where the FIRs need to be filed, Mr. Duggal?
Well, first and foremost, today everything is electronic. And that being so, the Indian Telegraph Act does not have applicability. It is only the Information Technology Act 2000, which is applicable. This is thanks to Section 81, which declares the IT Act as a special law, and it prevails over anything inconsistent therewith contained in any other law for the time being in force. But having said that, the ambit of this entire controversy has to be seen in the context of Section 69 of the Information Technology Act 2000, which calls for lawful interception. Now, lawful interception is a sovereign right of a sovereign government. And in the Indian context, the Supreme Court has upheld the constitutional validity of Section 69 of the IT Act, which authorizes the government to intercept in the ground of sovereignty, security, integrity of India, friendly relations with other nations, public order, decency, morality, or to prevent the commission of any cognizable offense. However, Section 69 does not allow the government to do interception by doing a criminal activity. So the moment you intercept using a spyware, which is the Pegasus, the spyware does what? It enters into your and my mobile phone without my permission, without my consent, coming inside, copying data, and then sending the data outside my device to some vested interests who have commissioned the same. This tantamounts to crystal clear hacking and computer-related offenses under Section 66 and Section 43 A, B, D, and I of the Information Technology Act. So once it's a specific offense, there is no law passed by Parliament which authorizes the government to commit offenses for the purposes of surveillance. That being so, it cannot be the legal argument of any government of any day to say that I am authorized to use spyware surveillance software for exercising my sovereign powers under Section 69 of the Information Technology Act. So in a scenario like this, we have actually been in a pretty much kind of a vacuum situation where most of the other countries are moving forward. We still have this complete denials to say, look, there's no statement whether the government has used Pegasus or not. Well, if they have, then it's a different ballgame and the concerned criminal liability will have to be appropriately apportioned. In case if they haven't, it's a much bigger question on not just the sovereignty, security, and integrity of India, but also on Indian cyber sovereignty. Because if any foreign state or non-state actor is doing this, targeting Indian computer systems or communication devices, this could prejudicially impact our nation, our national interests, and even our digital existence in the coming times. So the need for us to have a holistic approach is much better, rather than just to say, no inquiry, everything is hunky-dory, I've done absolutely correct things.
Yes, so Mr. Hegde, coming back to the argument that Mr. Duggal is making, which is we've had members of the BJP, although not the government directly, who have argued that if someone feels that their phones have been hacked, they should submit their phones for forensic investigation or they should file an FIR. Why have they not filed an FIR? So there is a reluctance to see this as a national security issue and to look at it more as an individual issue of privacy. What is the fallout or what is the implication of not looking at this as a national security issue?
Well, do the members of the BJP seriously assume that some cop in Jumri-Talaya, if an FIR is filed there, will be able to investigate a crime of this nature? The point is that today there are Indian computer devices which have been infected with spyware of a particularly insidious kind. The people whose devices may have been infected, there is a list. We know that about 7 journalists submitted their phones for forensics, and it was confirmed that their name was on the list, as well as that their phones were hacked, infested with spyware. Now, it can't be somebody's position that such an offense has happened and nobody is going to investigate or nobody is going to take cognizance of it. You do not need a petitioner to start it. It may be that I may very well have a suspicion that that my phone is hacked or that there is spyware there. Do I go about randomly saying that I suspect my phone is hacked? I am submitting my phone for forensics, and please do the needful. Is there a crime which has been revealed in that FIR? It will ultimately go into a whole host of legalese and bureaucraties. Today, worldwide, there is an infestation. There is also an infestation in India. Does the government propose to either say that, as Mr. Duggal rightly pointed out, either say that yes, we authorized it, or one of our agencies went beyond their brief and authorized it, or does the government not want to know who authorized it? It doesn't need an FIR to move if you are serious about investigation. If you are not serious about investigation, whatever the FIR, whatever the petition, the effort will only be to buy time.
Well, Mr. Kailash was saying there's another name here that was worrying and also slightly different, which is the former Supreme Court staffer who had accused former Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, of sexual harassment.
Whose phone is supposed to have been under the Pegasus screen.
Yes.
Whose entire family's phone.
Yes,
the entire family.
Yeah, the entire family apparently was on that list as well. Is this now in violation of the rape laws in India that provide privacy to the victim of any sort of crime of sexual nature? And under those laws, we know that the police of any police station can take cognizance of an offense of this kind. Is there a violation there as well?
I won't extend it to that extent that there is a violation of the rape laws because those are physical offenses. But yes, there is a violation of your privacy with regard to keeping the particulars of a person who has had this horrible experience in total privacy. What can happen and what is going to happen, as I understand, I'm late to the computer world. The fact is that that information available through spyware can be used for purposes of causing you damage and loss. It can be used in any position where you are involved. See, the trouble arises in the reading of the law, as the Supreme Court has now put it. It has now held that intercepted information obtained over the telecommunication systems can be led in evidence, even without the person knowing that the information now available against him is available to the government or to the persons who have done the interception. To my mind, this is a very dangerous trend because secret information found against you is being used against you, which is in violation of the constitutional provisions. The Supreme Court has taken the view, we can't say much against it, but it is a matter which needs to be reviewed. Mr. Pavan Duggal will tell you that whatever intercepted material is available, because you see recently in 2011 in the Maharashtra Criminal Activities Act, the Supreme Court said that under the provisions of the Act, you can intercept a phone or any device for the purpose of gathering information on the activities of the persons involved in such criminal activities. That's very good, do it, because you have a statutory permission. But do you have a statutory permission for everything else? In 97, 98, in the PUCL case, very strong observations were made on this. But The court went up to the extent of saying you cannot be difficult, you should not be unfair, you should not be foolish in using this jurisdiction to infringe somebody's fundamental rights following the principles in Maneka Gandhi. You see, if you are aware of all this and the law which has changed now, especially with the IT Act which came in 2000 and the judgments which have followed into the IT Act, striking down one provision but maintaining the rest, we're in a very nebulous position as far as the law is concerned. I mean, Mr. Duggal would be able to give you more information on this. We're only telling you what we understand of the situation. Lodging first information reports is not an answer in these kind of circumstances where spyware not developed in India, developed abroad, is now infiltrating the system. This is a very dangerous situation which has arisen. If there is no investigation, you will permit spyware to eat into your systems and release all information to whom it wants. If you remember, about a year ago, the entire grid was failing because of the infiltration into the system, the software breach. It broke the national electricity grid for a couple of hours. So you are having those kind of situations. We are not able to develop enough enough software to prevent the infiltration of our systems by this. But if they come in, isn't it our duty to investigate?
Yes.
We have to investigate, we must get to the bottom of it, and we must see what damage has been caused to the nation by this. Forget individuals. No policeman sitting in any country in the world is interested in what you and I do. They're interested in what people in authority are mattering. The average man on the street is not of consequence. The man who carries an image is what matters. For our government, it is the man on the street who gets affected when the man on top is affected. We must realize this.
You know, a couple of things. We have a few of our audience members who are asking us about the floods. We have a video uploaded where we've talked to organizations who are working on the ground, which has proper verified details on how you can help for floods in North Goa, North Karnataka and Maharashtra. Gunj, for example, is on the ground. Those details are in that video. Do check it out if you want details about the floods. In the meantime, the question that now we have to ask is about Parliament. Because we've discussed the laws as are available. We know that there is a parliamentary standing committee on IT and the possibility of a joint parliamentary committee as well. Mr. Hegde, how much power does the parliamentary standing committee on IT have? Because we know that it can call experts, it can question experts, it can ask people to appear before it. But what is the consequence of the report from the standing committee? We know that MPs have walked out of that standing committee just today.
They have done that. The parliamentary committee can submit a report. Then it is for the concerned ministry to take action, or for other parliamentarians to ask what action has the government taken based upon that report. It does not necessarily produce evidence. It can make recommendations. Ultimately, the matter would again have to go to the courts if there are any recommendations that criminal proceedings be launched, etc.
Provided it is laid before the House.
Yeah, provided it is laid before the House. There are so many provisos. Parliament has several procedures where the inconvenient can safely be not seen.
Mr. Hegde, sorry to interrupt your answer, but I just want to add the CAG reports, which is CAG is the auditor of the government of India. CAG reports have now come down to less than 25% of what they used to be on an annual basis. CAG has become largely inactive as well. So there is a lack of accountability on operations of government. Is this going to fall through those cracks?
I can't make a prediction, but at the end of the day, if your major industrialists, your major journalists, everybody who matters is being surveilled on, how comfortable are people with a surveillance state? Or do they think that there is no option currently? This has a great deal of bearing on the matter. If as Benjamin Franklin put it, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. How vigilant are you going to be about your liberty and how vigilant are your leaders going to be? The opposition has, for the moment, tried to block parliamentary proceedings. At some stage or the other, can they force the government to either make a statement or to order a JPC? Given the overwhelming strength of the government in parliament today, I venture to say that it may not be feasible. It may also be that events overtake us in the form of some court directive or the other. But courts also take some time before a matter actually gets into the final phase of hearing.
Forgive me, what is the consequence of a joint parliamentary committee? What happens to that report?
A joint parliamentary committee report is something which is then also placed before parliament. But since members of both houses and from both sides of parliament will be party to that, then it does have a certain greater validity. Again, what happens within parliament has to be followed up elsewhere. Kailash, you want to say something?
No. I was saying JPC reports by and large are not followed up by the next group of government which comes in. They're only valid in that parliament. That's the sad part of it. Until you don't follow up a JPC, or if you're from the JPC, if you appoint a commission, the commissions never give a report, 20 years, 18 years, 15 years. So you see, the whole situation then becomes partial. You go ahead, Sanjay.
Yeah, so that's important, that even if the fight is for a JPC, it's very likely that report will take a really long time to appear. And then when it does appear,
it has to come within the life of this Lok Sabha, which after all is another 3 years. But given the composition of parliament, it is also equally possible that there will be a majority report which says that nothing happened, and there will be a minority report which of dissenters which will say a lot of other things. The question is, see, it's like this. Action needs to be taken. We need to do something. This is something. Do we do it? Or is it that we ask effective action needs to be taken? We are serious about saying not only as to what has happened in the past, but the more important question is, how do we prevent this from happening in the future?
Yes.
Do we not need, at least now, need to make laws regarding privacy? Why is our privacy bill still hanging fire? Do we not need to have a full defined procedure that even in the rare case where something like Pegasus has to be deployed, it should be documented somewhere and that somebody has to sign off on it saying, yes, I authorize it. I don't think that there is any file anywhere in the government which authorizes the interception of the phone of one of the attendants to Mr. Deve Gowda, the former Prime Minister of India. These are such people, all kinds of absolutely casual contacts have been intercepted, but because people know that those phones may have been used by somebody else.
Mm-hmm. No, but and this is really interesting, right? Because we had, for example, Rafael, which was a particular incident or a particular case where there was accountability that was demanded by government. We had then the PM Cares Fund. Again, there was accountability demanded from government, and now we have this. And we've seen a pattern in how this government deals with it, which is to sidestep and turn a completely deaf ear and just wait for it to die down and move on to the next thing. And it's likely that is the strategy that they're employing again. But for those people in our chat window who are talking about, oh, but this is just privacy, it's not a big deal, who are saying things like, if you have nothing to hide, you should not be worried. It's okay. This is the new reality. Google has all of your data. Let me make this very, very clear. This is absolutely nothing. This is absolutely nothing like any organization having your data. This is somebody listening, switching on your phone and making a video, listening while you're in your bedroom. The worst violation of your privacy. We don't know who's listening. We don't know where that data is going. We don't know where that recording is finally landing and who's handling it. There's no sanctity to any of this because we don't know who's handling that information.
Faye, just one more clarification.
Yes.
It is not only the privacy of those phone numbers or the people who own them. I know at least two of those people whose phones there was this infestation. I called them up. One was a client of mine. It was definitely a breach of attorney-client privilege. That was Alok Verma, who the former CBI director. There is a journalist on that list whom I talked to. So it is, my privacy was also violated when I made those calls. And we do not know how many people's privacy was violated. So do not be casual. And the second point is that every keystroke that you make on your mobile phone or your device, each and everything is recorded. So supposing one of the people had a heart condition or was suffering from hemorrhoids, even that goes back to those who are intercepting.
All your personal data, including health.
So
Mr. Duggal, can I ask, after you finish, I wanted to ask Mr. Duggal a question. You finish and I'll ask him.
Yeah, please go ahead.
See,
Go ahead,
Mr. Duggal, under the IT Act, you have provisions as to how you have to proceed and investigate. After the institution of a complaint and after the filing of a procedure, you have a certain procedure to follow. The IT Act in itself says you will investigate into a cyber crime, roughly put. But does it say, or does it prevent anyone from investigating into a situation of this kind without a report?
Thanks, sir, for that.
That's a very important part of our situation today.
Sir, it has not stopped any police officer of the rank of an
Repeat. In the absence of a report alleging violations of the IT Act, what is the status of that situation? We are facing it today.
Even if in the absence of a report, any police officer of the rank of an inspector is authorized suo moto to detect, investigate and prosecute any contravention or offences under the IT Act. This is section 878 of the IT Act, and this prevails over the CRPC thanks to section 81 of the IT Act.
That's right.
So they don't require anything. No FIR required. They can suo moto go ahead and investigate, provided there's a political will. Now, because a policeman may not automatically want to do so, on source information they can investigate. Suo moto on the basis of information in the public domain, they can do that. There's no stopping. And the IT Act recognizes that because it's a contravention pertaining to the electronic format, earlier it was used to be a deputy superintendent of police. In the 2000 law, it's come down to an inspector. So right now there's no bar. The only thing is there a political will? Does somebody wants to go ahead and do it?
I think we should request the present Commissioner of Police to file a case.
Be careful about what you wish for, Kailash.
I hope or any Commissioner of Police in any state, let him do it. We have so many upright officers in our system.
Yes. Actually, so let me ask that question now, Mr. Hegde. If we are expecting, say, Delhi Police or the CBI or any of the other intelligence agencies or investigative agencies in our country to conduct this investigation, ideally it should be NIA, but NIA doesn't seem to be interested at all. Would you say that these would be independent and reliable investigations, or are we in caged parrot territory here?
Well, the only way that parrots can be uncaged is that if there is somebody supervising them, and the only independent organization that way is the judiciary. Therefore, a court-monitored investigation of the kind that happened in Jain Hawala, because earlier when I was telling you that court hearings also take time to get to a stage where there are effective hearings. If after reading a petition, the court decides that it's worth issuing notice on, the government comes back with a reply. It's only when the government reply does not look satisfactory that then that the issue is joined in right earnest. Justice J.S. Verma, Kailash will remember. First, took on the Jain Hawala diary
That's right.
on
Single-handed.
record. Then he pushed for an independent investigation, and he would monitor it. So there were the CBI chief, if I remember right, it was Joginder Singh at that point
That's
of time,
right.
who would come into court, tell the court a certain portion of what could be revealed in court, and then there were in-camera proceedings. So the court was very careful that while it would not direct the investigation, it would, however, monitor it to see that it was truly independent. And as a consequence, charge sheets were filed, but then on an issue of law, later on the Delhi High Court intervened, and that laid the correct law.
That's right.
But there is no doubt that through the device of a continuing mandamus, a court can monitor an investigation.
Joginder Singh spent more time in the court than he spent in his office.
Yes, but that was a time when there was accountability among the political class, which was enforced by a fiercely independent judge.
Yes, very independent.
Well, yes, Mr. Vasdev, my final question is this. At the end of the day, this is of extreme sensitivity because it lays the foundation going forward of how we treat this as Indian citizens, right? Because it violates not just your right to privacy, it violates our dignity as individual citizens to keep things private. And the scary part for me is if, for example, NSO has argued repeatedly that it only sells this software to registered governments, to verified governments. And if our government is saying that it has not used it, then it could be some other government. We know that the Wire had said quite clearly that one sitting Supreme Court judge was also on the list, although they never really gave us the name of that sitting Supreme Court judge. How dangerous is it if members of the judiciary are being spied on, either by our government or somebody else's government?
You see, at this point of time, I would look at it a bit differently. Everybody is being spied on. There is nobody who can be spared. You do not know who will be next on the list. It can be the head of, it can be a president, it can be a prime minister, it can be a chief minister, it can be a governor. So therefore, we really don't know who's going to be next on the list. Supreme Court judges have only got limited information about the nation. They've got information about cases. But when you look at the others who carry sensitive information, the chief of staff, look at the kind of information they have. Look at the intelligence systems. Look at the information that they have. It is here that we must come in to put an end to this and tell everybody, look, we're capable of defending ourselves in circumstances where you seek to purloin our situations. If we don't do it, either by executive action or through an inquiry, then we will be playing into the hands of anybody who wants to break into our systems for personal gain and prejudice to the nation. We've got to look into it.
Right. On that note, I'm going to leave it there because I think that the thing that sounds most probable to give us results is an investigation that is monitored by the judiciary. This is something that other citizens have asked for, other activists have asked for as well, monitored by either a sitting or a retired judge in order to make sure that that investigation is valid and is reliable and is something that action is taken upon. Gentlemen, I thank you so much for answering our questions this evening. To our viewers, remember the news is coming up at exactly 9 o'clock where we tell you everything that's happened in the country without any opinion whatsoever, no drama. Take a look at that at 9 o'clock. Do remember to subscribe to our channel and tell your friends and family about it. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Thank you.